well, what is causing all of this stuff to men? I went into deep research, and then I discovered what's happening to us guys in this world. One of those things that was very concerning to me was the clothes we wear. Most clothing for guys has about 40% polyester in it, and polyester actually is one of the fabrics that sheds xenoestrogens the easiest.
Welcome everyone to another episode of the Robert Patton Global Podcast. I am here with Mike Arghavani. He's a PhD scientist and a former pharmaceutical industry executive. And we're going to be discussing sheath underwear and the benefits, the health benefits. Thank you, sir, for joining me here today. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's actually been about a month or so since I've done a podcast, and but I was very excited to have you on because you had emailed us about your experience with sheath underwear, and I was just really excited to discuss this with you, being such a highly educated individual. So, I mean, I guess we could start off, if you don't mind, telling the people how you found sheath and some of the experience you have had with wearing it and why it's beneficial.
Sure. Look, I've been using a product for almost 3 years now. I started purchasing it about 3 years ago, I think, and I've bought quite a few because I share it with other guys and try to help other guys use it. And I found your product through lots of research. As you mentioned, I'm a scientist, and so this is because of my own personal story. So I guess it's best to just give a little bit of background about my own personal story and how I got to your product. Just like, every other guy, when I was younger, I was a swimmer. I used to swim when I was in high school and college, and I went to graduate school in my 20s, and right around like 27, 28. That's when I used to started having problems, with down there. And so I went to my doctors and said, look, I have a lot of pain down there. They examined it and they said, look, it's nothing but varicocele veins. Swimmers usually get those because they wear tight swimsuits and all that. And so I had to have surgery. And I hadn't finished my PhD yet. I was 27 or so. And I remember all of this because the story becomes really important as we tell it. So at the time, my doctor tested everything, right? Tested me down there for everything to make sure everything works, and also tested my testosterone levels and all of that. And we're talking about 1997 here. So my testosterone, I remember very clearly, was around 690 nanogram per deciliter, which I asked him at the time, what does that number mean? And he said, look, usually for guys your age, athletic guys your age, that's a little bit lower than what I see, but it's normal. Once you have the surgery, it'll go back up. So I had the surgery. I started feeling better after a while, and I forgot all about it. Then I went on with my life. I got married, I had kids and all that. And right around the age of 42 or so, I'm talking about 2012. Right around 2012, I started getting really depressed. I mean, extremely depressed, to the point that here I am, a scientist working hard, have family. By that time, I had 2 kids and all of that. And I remember going to my doctor and saying, listen, I can't even, when I go to the gym, when I want to change to go get my swimsuit on, I don't even have the energy to put the key in, or like this is how bad it is. So he did all sorts of tests, and they did testosterone testing, and my testosterone was down to 270, I think, 275 nanogram per deciliter. But that is in the normal range. And so he was like, well, this is normal. And I told him, well, you know what? But I remember when I was younger, it was this. And he's like, well, you know what? But that's just normal aging. So because I was so depressed, I was he sent me to a psychiatrist. I went and saw a psychiatrist. And before you know it, I'm taking Zoloft. I'm taking a mood stabilizer. I'm taking Adderall. It got to a point where I was taking up to 50 milligrams of Adderall a day. Just to function. I was an executive at a pharmaceutical science company, a biotech company in Chicago area. I had to get up at 5 a.m., drive an hour and a half to get to work, work all those hours and then come back home. And the only thing that actually made me function was the Adderall, right? And I really thought I was having, psychiatric problems. I'm depressed. This is just normal young men. I mean, that's what they told everyone. I mean, men just get depressed. This is what happens to us guys. You settle down, you have a family, the nesting stuff, and this depression comes with it, right? And when you look at it from the outside, here I am. I've got my PhD. I have a family. I'm pretty much successful. So why am I so depressed? What's causing this, right? Really, that was always something in the back of my mind until from 2012 till like 2018 or so, I kept on doing that. I just kept on taking those drugs and going on working. And right around 2018, around beginning of 2018, I mean, I started gaining weight because those drugs, especially Zoloft and mood stabilizers, they give you bloating. So I turned from a swimmer build to something, a round little thing, weird looking guy, right? I mean, I have pictures of mine from 2018, and you look at me and you're like the double chins and all that. So, and I started feeling really weird. So I went back to my doctor and I said, look, none of this stuff is working anymore. And I'm like, look, I've been doing this for all these years. And so what he did is that he tested everything again. And throughout the years we were testing, and my testosterone had dropped to 40 nanogram per deciliter. And my estradiol, which is estrogen, was at 45, what they call picogram per 45. They do for testosterone. I think the range is a little different the way that they do it. It's actually a little bit deceiving because that number is 10 times higher than testosterone. So in essence, my body had 10 times more estrogen than testosterone in it, right? And
That's imbalanced.
That's imbalance, yeah. So I said, look, I'm having dizziness and all sorts of stuff. Then we did, he said, oh, let's do an MRI. So we did an MRI and we found out that next to my pituitary gland, there is a little tiny cyst or a tumor. That may have been there all my life. We have no idea. But at that moment, he used that as an excuse and said, well, you know what? You have, obviously, there's something there. And so you need to go and see an endocrinologist. This is where my story starts, really. From that moment on, as a scientist, I became obsessed. I'm like, why was this happening to me? Why none of this was caught? If in 2012 this was caught, I would have never gone through 6 years of hell, right? And so, what I went and saw an endocrinologist. We started working on testosterone replacement therapy, and I started on that. And at that time, I was still taking all of those psychiatric drugs. And then suddenly there was a huge, interactions between them. Because once you start taking testosterone, suddenly the brain starts functioning normally again. And so all these drugs didn't work together. And so by the middle of 2019, I actually was going, I mean, it was just crazy. I was losing time. It was really horrible. So as a scientist, I just took control. I said, you know what? I did a lot of research, and then I said, you know what? I'm going to throw all of these psychiatric drugs away. It's clear that my depression had nothing to do with anything except low testosterone. And then also I started doing other research in regards to the fact that it's not just testosterone that you have to take, and we can probably talk about those stuff too, because there are a lot of guys right now that are taking testosterone replacement therapy and may not be working for them, and there are reasons for that. But as a part of that, so how did I get to your product? So while I was doing all this research and trying to figure out, well, what is causing all of this stuff to men? I went into deep research, and then I discovered what's happening to us guys in this world. For example, from phytoestrogens in seed oils, for example, like soybean oil. Soybean oil is poison to men, right? From soybean oil to sunflower oil, to corn oil, you name it. All these seed oils are filled with what we call phytoestrogens, right? And so these phytoestrogens work just like estrogen in a man's body. So that's one source of it. The other source is what we call xenoestrogens. Xenoestrogens come from plastics. Now, in today's world, everything is either has plastic in it or plastic covering it, right? And so xenoestrogens also act like estrogen in a human body. So the problem with estrogen in a man's body is that estrogen competes directly with testosterone in a man's body. So it can actually take over the function of testosterone. So if a guy has, let's say, equal or higher amounts of estrogen, like what happened to me in 2018, you turn into, you turn into something in between, whatever you want to call it. So I started doing this research, and I discovered all that's happening to us guys, especially in the modern world, in the Western world. And then one of those things that was very concerning to me was the clothes we wear. The clothes that we wear, most clothing for guys has about 40%, polyester in it. And polyester actually is one of the fabrics that sheds xenoestrogens the easiest. And guys buy a lot, undershirts, underwear, and especially socks, things that I consider the most important, and sheets that you sleep in, right? All of these all have these kind of stuff in it. So as a part of my mission to try to do all of these things and doing my research, I decided to change everything that I wear. See, I wear nothing but cotton. Everything has to be 100% cotton or a natural fiber. And so I started looking for, for all sorts of clothing. Obviously, and underwear was one of the most important ones. And so I started doing research on all the underwear that was out there. And of course, you could buy underwear that's 100% cotton out there, but they're not that comfortable, right? And so I was trying different underwears, and one of the underwears that I tried, and I tried a number. I mean, I did it the scientific way, where you would take like 10 or 20 different brands, put them together, try them out. And yours was one of them. And I found yours purely by accident. I was watching a podcast, and so I saw a podcast, and they talked about your underwear. And at the time, it was the original design, where it only has one pouch, right?
Yes.
I was like, well, I got to get this. I got to try it out. So I bought your underwear, and I tried all of these underwears out, and yours fit into my model of having to have natural fibers that will not interfere with the endocrine system. And what was so different about yours is that, and this is what I tell all my friends when I give them a pair. I said, look, the very first time I put it on, after a couple of hours, I felt like when I was back when I was 28, after I had my varicocele surgery, so I've always felt, heaviness down there if I didn't have the right support. The design was amazing. You get just the right amount of lift down there, and then you don't have to. I mean, I was like, wow, I don't have to a whole day, and I don't have to adjust myself once. It wasn't just the fact that it was the fiber that otherwise there are other cotton underwear out there that you can buy. So I kind of became obsessed with your product. I started wearing it all the time. I started trying it in different ways. There are other products out there that have, I would call, pseudo pouch kind of things that just don't work anywhere as good. There's this ball hammock thing that the balls hang, instead of going into a hammock, they pop out. So I really, after trying your product for a few months, I said, look, this is not only good for endocrine health, it's just overall good for men. Especially guys that are older. Look, I'm 54 now, right? As we get older, things tend to sag down there. And this overall, it was the additional comfort, the fact that it's what we should be wearing, and also there are other scientific reasons. So a lot of studies show that guys should not be wearing underwear that's too loosey-goosey, and you don't want to wear things that are too tight either for temperature reasons. Your product provides just the right amount of support, not too tight, not too loose, so all of that, and so I started wearing it, and I started actually advocating it to my friends. Whenever one of my friends would say they're having an issue for Christmas or for their birthday, I would send them a pair of underwear. And I'm not joking. I'm like, here, take this. He's like, what the hell is this? I'm like, try it out. Not anything, just try it out. And so they would come back to me, and they would say, wow, this is unanimously, every guy that I've given your product to, they wear it, they come back, and they say, I didn't think it would feel this comfortable. And their only quarrel with it is the price. And I tell them, no, I'm serious. And I tell them, look, if you can't spend $200 on your junk or for your balls, then well, I don't know what to tell you. All you need is 4 or 5 pairs of good underwear. You don't need anything more than that. And so this is how I got to your product. But overall, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you was because I really think, and as I said, I've been doing this I've been testing your product for 3 years, and I've been studying about men's health overall for the last 10, 12 years as a scientist. I'm passionate about what's happening to us guys. And I wanted to contact you first to see if there's ways that I can help you, and we'll talk about that offline. And also, I wanted to truly try to somehow get the message out. I thought it was time. I'm one of those nerdy guys scientists who sits in the background and just does work behind the computer and does research. But I thought I've done enough research now, and there's so much confusion out there that it's time to get out there and get the message out. So this is my first attempt at doing that.
I really appreciate you with reaching out to us to begin with, and then with the eagerness to spread the awareness of the issues that men are facing and how different like different underwear can help. I originally invented the underwear when I was in Iraq in 2008, and it was just because I was wearing these army issued whitey tighties, and they're just like smashing everything up into my groin, and it was just uncomfortable, sweaty, sticky, hot mess down there. And I had this epiphany that what if there was a pouch that separated everything from your inner thighs? So like, what's wrong with traditional underwear from a scientific standpoint, and what's it doing to the men's reproductive organs?
Well, very good question. First of all, let's talk about your issue. I mean, more than anything else, when you have things wet like that with sweat just sticking together down there, that can cause all sorts of infections, right? I'm sure you had lots of your buddies running and getting, yeast creams and jock itch, sprays and all of that, because that's the very first thing that happens. More than anything else, guys get yeast infection down their jock itch. And that should not naturally be happening. I mean, that just shouldn't be happening. That happens because of what you just said, really tight, everything squished together, sweat all the time, high temperatures. So that's the first thing, but that's not the worst of it. When you have your testicles stuck together like that at such high temperatures, both testosterone levels and sperm count drops. So the reason why men's testicles are outside of the body is because naturally they need to be somewhere around 2 degrees colder than the body temperature. That's just physiologically, that's the temperature that testicles function best at. So if you take them and stick them to your body and then just warm them up at the same temperature, even if you're overheat them, what that happens is that it actually stops the function. Actually, this study has been done many times where they've taken guys and let them really dunk it in like warm water, right? And sit there for hours with their balls dunked in warm water, and then test their level of testosterone or sperm count after a while. And that's actually a way to physically castrate a man. I mean, if over time, if a guy sticks their balls in it warm enough, let's say human body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius. If you keep the testicles at 42 degrees, which is high fever temperature, for a certain amount of time, they just stop working. So that's really the biggest problem is that it wasn't just the discomfort that you were having, that over time, that leads to lower testosterone and lower sperm count. Now imagine all of that aside, with all the other things that you and I have been talking about. I mean, us guys have been exposed to so much since the 1970s. And I mean, as I told you, it's a passion of mine, and I've done a lot of research, and I would love to walk through some of it with you, just so that every guy who's listening to this, I want them to think about their own health, and perhaps this might help them a little bit with what they're going through and the feelings they're having. So one of the solutions is clearly what you wear. I mean, and your product is, of all the products I've tried, and it seems intuitive, but hey, nobody else did it until you did it, right? I mean, I people keep on saying that, but I mean, when I tell my friends and I gave it to them, I'm like, well, it seems simple. I'm like, if it's so intuitive, why didn't you come up with it, right? I'm serious. I mean, look, as a scientist, one has to say the best ideas are the simple ones, right? You solve a problem with something that seems remarkably simple, but it's quite ingenious. I mean, as a scientist, I love the elegance of the design. I mean, I love that. I love the elegance of it. I love the functionality of it. And I love the fact that there's so much that can be done with it. And so yeah, I mean, your product is definitely one of the things every guy should have in regard if we take care about their their manhood down there. And definitely the other things that I would tell guys in regards to wearing that I would say is really important. I would say look around your house. If you're sleeping on sheath bed sheets that are polyester, throw them away immediately, especially if you like to sleep naked or take your shirts off at night, which I do. I like to sleep like that. And so any undershirts that you're wearing, make sure they're purely cotton or the natural fibers. They don't have any polyester or any sort of, it's not just polyester, any synthetic fabric, right? All of the stuff that comes from petroleum, they all produce one form or another of these, estrogens. And then I would say socks. One of the things that are actually guys don't think about at all is socks. The most absorbent part of the skin on a man's body is their feet, their belly area, and their scrotum. So those are the areas that you want to keep away from those kind of fibers. So that's how I got to your product, and so that's why I'm talking to you. So, yeah.
Okay. Now, you were telling me in a previous phone call that over the last, I don't know, 100 years or 90 years, something, you gave me some date range about how men's natural testosterone or sperm count has dropped dramatically. And you have some theories as to why that's the case. Can you?
Sure. So this is really the core of my message to all my fellow brothers out there. So I really want them to listen, because look, if this can happen to me and it can happen to all of us, and it's happening to all of us in a very quiet, silent way. And there are a lot of guys out there that are probably suffering right now, and they don't even know why they're suffering. And I'm serious about that. I mean, and this is truly a passion. I mean, for 5-6 years, I suffered thinking that there's something wrong with me mentally, right? I thought that I'm actually, I'm like, oh my God, I have everything that a man should want to have, right? I had a PhD, I had a great career, I had a wife, 2 kids, everything you would think. And why am I depressed? And what did the society would tell me? Oh, this is what men go through, they go through this nesting stage, they feel trapped, blah, 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 and all that stuff. So this is what a guy goes through. It's normal, which is not at all normal. So in regards to numbers you're talking about, let's talk about both of them, testosterone first and then sperm count. So this is what we have historically for testosterone numbers are actually from older people or sicker people. So the numbers are actually lying a little bit, but a lot of studies have been done. And I want to refer to some of the actual studies because it's important for the guys to realize how important that is. So testosterone is measured in nanograms per deciliter. So when you go to your doctor, they test it, they give you numbers, 200, 300, that's nanograms per deciliter. And what's considered normal right now, anything between 250 or 200 to 900 is considered normal. That's what they consider normal range right now. Remember when I was like in 27, I was 27, mine was like 690, and then it dropped to like 250, and they were still considering that normal. And so what studies have shown, there's a study that has shown that between 1996 to 2016, testosterone levels have dropped by 25%. And there was another study in 2007 that showed since 1980, testosterone is dropping 1% per year. And there was another study that's a little older, but has information from testosterone data from 50 years ago that shows testosterone on average has dropped by 50% for men over 50 years, 50%.
Yeah.
So that, which kind of correlates with the study that says it's been decreasing 1% a year, right? So 50 years, 1% a year by 50%. Now, there's some really crude studies, but I really believe in them, where there were tissue samples that were kept from, the Wild West and from the time where, guys used to roam free in the West over 100 years ago. And those data suggest that men back then had testosterone numbers around 2000 2,000 nanogram per deciliter. And compare that with the range that they talk about. The upper range right now, the doctors talk about is around 900. And so in reality, I think, based on everything that I've done, testosterone for men has been dropping steadily, and probably within the last, from the time I was born in 1970, I keep on putting it all from there. It's probably has dropped somewhere around 70%.
Yeah.
That's just remarkable. That's just remarkable. When you think about what testosterone does, I mean, testosterone is what makes men, right? And so, and there's just so many other things that goes into it. I mean, from mood health, from the way a man's brain works, and also from the way that just about everything is more psychological, actually, not just the physical characteristics of a man, psychological characteristics. And so, so as I said, as a part of what I was doing and studying all of these things, I became really passionate about it, because I'm also a father. I have a son. His name is Daniel. He's 16 years old. And so, so as I was doing all of these things, one of the other things that I'd like to tell guys out there is that, you know, I was born in 1970. I mean, when I was a kid, up to 1980s or 1990s, the kind of diapers that parents used to use was these cloth inserts and with a plastic wrapping, but at least the cloth was wrapped around, you know, the genitals, right? Right around 1980 to 1990, this is, and I've done a lot of research on this. Right around between 1980s to 1990s is where the big shift happened, where people started using all these throwaway diapers for kids, and those throwaway diapers are filled with these chemicals that are that when they get wet, they turn into gel. The problem is that they're all polymers. These are all polymers that can easily break down into xenoestrogens. So imagine us wrapping our boys with something that is giving their body nothing but these xenoestrogens.
Wow.
By the time they're born, right? Now, here's the scary part of it. This is the part that is really important. We have studies that show that when boys are born, boys go through something called mini puberty. It's natural. This is a natural process for us guys. Between 1 month old and 3 month old, there's a spike of testosterone in a man's body, where what happens is that a boy's body suddenly goes through something from almost no testosterone in the body. It goes all the way up to puberty level for about 3-4 months, and then it drops back down. This happens between the age of 1 month old to 6 months old. Why does this happen? We have a lot of studies that shows that this spike is extremely important for the wiring of a man's brain. This is when a man's brain gets wired. This is when a masculine brain is formed. I'm talking purely based on wiring, not anything else. And now, think of it that way. Now imagine having something that can disrupt that process dramatically, right? Suddenly you have boys that are covered with these xenoestrogens. A baby's skin is incredibly absorbent, especially their scrotum. And on top of that, nowadays parents put those kids into those diapers. I mean, I did it myself. I feel so guilty because I did it myself, right? I mean, for hours at a time. And not only that, they add creams, right? For example, because they don't want the kid to get diaper rash, they put all these other stuff on top of it that they say, oh, just put this cream on it or that cream and it stops diaper rash. The problem is that all of those creams actually help with the transfer of those xenoestrogens into the body because they're all oil-based, right? And xenoestrogens are oil-soluble. So why am I bringing this up? Because, look, this is controversial, but again, as a man who's got a son who's 16 and thankfully seems normal, or at least just like most young men should be. But look at our society today. Look at what's happening with young men. I mean, this is very controversial, but I want to say it anyway. Look at all of these gender fluidity stuff that have come up, right? They correlate perfectly to the time where these diapers started being used in mass way, right? A man's brain is formed, I mean, the wirings form more or less in the first 2 years. We know that. A lot of studies show that. And imagine for the first 2 years of our boys' lives, we're just putting them into these things.
Yeah, they're like absorbing all the estrogen through their, yeah.
And I did that myself. I mean, I'm a father of a son. I did that. I feel very guilty about it. This is why I'm so passionate about this. I mean, look, I know it may be a little bit more expensive, but just throw away those plastic diapers, go back to the good old cloth diapers, inserts. I mean, your boys will thank you for it. I mean, they really will. And that's just one of the simplest things I would tell every guy to do. Fathers usually worry about their sons more than themselves. So this is a message that I like for all of them to take home. And then, of course, in regards to their own health, as I said, your product is something that I would say, throw away whatever underwear you have. Just go out and just throw them away and buy 5 or 6 pairs of sheath and start wearing it. I mean, that's the first thing I would do. And another thing is socks. I mean, I used to love to wear socks, but all the socks that I used to wear were 40% polyester, right? You can't find socks, at least not cheap socks, that don't have polyester in it, right? You can buy specialty socks nowadays over the net, but which guy is going to pay $30 a pair for socks or something like that, right? So I tell guys, best not to wear socks. If you like wearing a lot of socks, it's best not to wear socks if you can't afford buying, good socks. And so there are other things that I would talk about, like, for example, carpeting. Another thing, since 1960s, what have we been putting in our homes? Carpet, right? What is carpet? The crappiest plastic stuff you can get. They also release a lot of these xenoestrogens. And so that's another thing. I mean, try not to spend as much time on synthetic carpets. Use real rugs, Persian rugs. In the old days, people used to use rugs that were made out of wool. Now that's healthy, but either go with hardwood floors or other than, because I mean, that's what we do also. We spend 7-8 hours of our time at home walking on carpet, and our feet are right on those carpets. And our little babies, our boys, will just let them, and so, oh, look at how soft this carpet is, And the funny thing is there's no studies. Here's the thing, nobody's controlling this. For consumer goods, there's no regulations. I mean, whatever, let's say, Huggies says it's in their diaper, we just have to take their word for it. There's nobody out there that's testing it, right? So this is my passion overall. As I was telling you, this is what really makes me get up in the mornings to try to figure all this out.
Well, I am super excited to be talking to you, someone of your intellect and passion and just research into all these men's issues and how not only our underwear could help maybe reverse some of those issues or just mitigate them, but also the other topics you're discussing, like the carpet and the socks and the diapers. I've never heard that. That makes so much sense if their body is absorbing all these phytoestrogens as
xenoestrogens. Phytoestrogens come from plants. So phytoestrogens come from soybean oil.
Yeah.
Phyto means plant. Phytoestrogen means plant estrogen. Xeno means external. Xenoestrogen means external estrogen.
Yeah. Well, and then you hear the term soy boy, and I was drinking
poison for men. Soybeans.
Yeah, exactly. And so I stopped drinking soy milk around the time I started hearing that. That was, and I drank it for a couple of years because I'm allergic to milk. And so I'm drinking the soy milk probably back in the early 2000s, and I haven't drank it since, but this is all quite fascinating.
Well, we talked about the testosterone numbers. I mean, that's one thing that has to do with a man's masculinity. But the other one, which has more to do with the man being able to have a child, is even more scary. I mean, when you look at the actual sperm count numbers, the data, actually, we have a lot of really good data for it. Like there was a 2017 meta-analysis. There's this guy, his last name is Levin. He's passionate about this stuff. He first started a meta-analysis based on North America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. And he published that data in 2017. And his data showed that since 1973 to 2011, sperm count has dropped by 60% in men, just between that range. So what does that mean? That means that, so in 1973, a man had 99 million sperm per every milliliters of semen, and it went down to about 47 million per ml in 2011. Now that's just sperm per ml. What is also more important is actually how many sperm do you have per load, right? So the load numbers have stayed more or less. The volume is usually between 2 to 3 ml, and that hasn't changed over time. So an average man's load is about 2 to 3 ml. And so that turns into something like in 1973, we had 300 million sperm per load. In 2011 was 130 million sperm per load. Now that's his study. Then there are other studies that were done more recent. There was a study done on young men, just looking at young men much more recently in 2022. And that showed that young men, now this correlates directly to that diaper thing that I'm talking about, right? Because these young men that were in this study were pretty much young men who started wearing diapers back in 1990s, right? In this study, it showed that the average sperm count for these young men is between 20 to 30 million sperm per ml, 20 to 30 million. That's 90% lower than the 300 million. That's 60% lower than 99 million per ml back in 1973. And here's the thing. There is a rate-limiting step where a man can actually impregnate a woman. It's actually is a term for it. They call it fecundity. It sounds weird. It comes from fecundity. So there's a fecundity function, and that fecundity limit is around 20 million sperm per ml. So if once a man's sperm count drops between below 20 million per ml, they usually will have a very hard time having natural conception. And that's why you also see a lot of guys right now having problem with that. Fecundity, F-E-C-U-N-D-I-T-Y, fecundity.
Fecundity.
Yeah, fecundity, it means the ability to impregnate, or it to be fruitfulness. It comes from fecundus, the word in Latin for fruitfulness. So that's the term that's used to explain the fruitfulness of a man. So there's a lot of studies that can show that. I mean, pretty much a man needs to have at least 20 million sperm per ml of ejaculate to be able to impregnate without problem. Usually, obviously, the higher the better. But this is a big problem because young men are right at that border. We're talking about literally sitting at 20 million to 30 million. And that's not just the worst of it. The same guy I talked about at Levin, he did another study that he just published in 2023. He did a meta-analysis, not only just with North America, Australia, Europe, and New Zealand. This time it was 53 countries. So it took 53 countries and over the whole area, the whole time span. And then he figured out very similar that between 1973 to 2018, sperm count went down from 335 million per load to 126 million per load, something like that. And what he found out which was even more worrisome, was that the decline is accelerating. So since 2000, the decline is 2.6% per year, 2.6% per year. While back then, in his original study, it was 1.16% per year. So it's almost declining twice as fast.
Yeah. That
so this is a
rapid decline.
Look, us men are being chemically castrated. And it's a fact, I'll say it out loud. It's time to be said. Men are being chemically castrated, and very little is being spoken about it, right? And just all industries are complicit in it, as if this was somehow designed. I'm not joking. It would just drive me crazy. Even for young, healthy men, when I go to the gym, I'm a swimmer, so I usually don't go lift weights and stuff. I like swimming, but every once in a while, when I go to do some weights, I see these young guys that show up and they want to look good. They're wearing this really tight, stuff that makes them look good. And I'm always tell them, I'm like, what is that? Oh, whatever shirt from this brand. I'm like, so have you looked what it's made out of? And it's usually like 40% polyester. I'm like, man, you're sweating in that. No, and I love doing that. I mean, I like just sitting there and giving them a 15-minute lecture. You see them just take it off right there. I'm like, you know what? If I were you, I would just wear no shirt and run without a shirt. Why are you wearing that? You're sweating in it. Your body's absorbing all that crap. And so just take it off. And you just pay $50 for something to look good. And what you're doing is you're actually hurting your overall health. So the message about clothing is that the message about food is, look, I know it's expensive, but it's crazy that we have to now pay more money for getting the same food that our grandparents ate for organic. But no, as much organic as possible. Though there is no such thing as real organic anymore, because everything is polluted. But at least it's better than the junk that that you buy from Walmart. So eat as much organic as possible. Try to not use anything, especially soft plastics, right? Water bottles, don't use, those people buy, I see people drinking water all the time, especially the very soft plastic bottles. They're filled with xenoestrogens. I mean, just get yourself a nice, aluminum cup or something and just fill it with water from your own house. I mean, and filter it if you're worried about it.
What about these BPA free?
Yeah, exactly. Is it metal? Is your cup metal?
No, it's plastic.
It's a hard plastic. It's okay. Look, it's better than the soft ones. It's better, but it's not. But it still leaches out some.
Okay.
I'm just being honest. I mean,
no, good. I want to know, and I see a lot of people drinking out of like glass water bottles and the tin water containers.
Aluminum. Copper is the copper. Copper would be best, and glass would be best. Those two would be best.
Okay.
Aluminum. Aluminum is okay too, but some aluminum gets into your body over time. So that they would be best. I would try not eating anything that's been wrapped around plastics for a long time. One of the things, just eat. This is what I've done myself. I make sure to, as I said, eat organic. Try to get plastics out of your life in any form or shape that you can. In regards to what kind of foods you should eat, every guy, I think, these are the kind of things that I tell every guy I think you should take as supplement. You should make sure that you take magnesium supplements. You don't have to take it every day. I'm not one of those people who says you have to take all these supplements every day or otherwise. No, moderation, right? I would say these supplements are important for a guy: magnesium, omega-3, zinc, vitamin D3, and boron. And I would say magnesium, take it every other day. Omega-3, make sure you eat lots of fish, or make sure you buy really high quality fish oil. And again, that's another problem that you can't find them, right? With high quality. I've done a lot of research and I found which products have the good stuff in them and which products don't. And also in regards to zinc, just take zinc supplements once every other day, once a third day, around 30 milligrams. Vitamin D3 is one of the biggest important things. I know people have heard about vitamin D3, but vitamin D3 is actually a hormone. Most people don't know this, that vitamin D is a hormone, okay? And the reason that they use international units instead of micrograms, when you take vitamin D, they say, well, 5,000 units. And they're like, wow, that's such a large number, 5,000 units, 10,000 units. That number was put together by the US government in World War II. There was a huge vitamin D deficiency in the servicemen during World War II. And there was a massive shortage of vitamin D to get it to them. So instead of using micrograms for dosing, they came up with their own international unit. And they used these things called international units. And they said, 400 IUs would be what a person needs every day. 400 IUs is what a dead person needs every day. That's nothing. I would say between 10,000 to 20,000 IUs is what I would say everybody should take every day. And older men like us, over 40, should take vitamin K2 with it, because vitamin D functions with vitamin K2. So 100 micrograms of vitamin K2 with vitamin D is really important, because that helps make sure that calcium doesn't fill your arteries. It actually goes where it's supposed to go, to the bones. And vitamin D3 is not just for bone health. That's what they sell to everybody. Vitamin D3 is a precursor of testosterone. Yeah, it's one of the biggest precursors of it. It's actually a hormone. It's a pre-hormone. So your body converts it to testosterone. That's why it's so important for a man to have lots of vitamin D3.
And you don't get the vitamin D3 from sunlight, or?
Good question. Very good question. So back in the old days when our ancestors ran around mostly naked in the sun, if a full day exposure in the sun, you get about 20,000 IUs. So what I'm giving you is about a full day exposure of one of our ancestors being in the sun.
Nice.
So that's where I get that number from.
I like it.
So if you get the way that you and I go outside with only our hands and face showing, we're barely making any vitamin D3. So,
okay.
Yeah.
That is really good to know. I was taking notes, but I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch some of this, and I advise you all to do the same, because this guy knows what he's talking about. We're all, laymen compared to you, and you're actually doing the research, and I really appreciate you sharing this information with us. What percentage of polyester is like acceptable in clothing? Because most of it has some level, socks for the elasticity and.
Yeah. I for example, your product has some elastane in it for about I think 9%, right? That's how much you guys have in it. Look, what percent is acceptable? I would say right around that, between 5 to 10% of, and I would only say spandex or elastane or something like that, because they're slightly chemically different than polyester.
Okay.
Polyester is designed to shed. It sheds really easily, okay? Natural polyester. Elastane doesn't. It's actually designed to be stretchy. And so it doesn't fall apart as easily. It's actually designed to do the exact opposite, to hold its structure. So I'm not worried about that low level of it. Honestly, eventually one day, if I get to take this to the next level and really try to help men, because nobody's doing the kind of stuff I'm imagining on doing real studies on men's health, right? And in the pharmaceutical industry, we do studies called extractables and leachables study, where you literally take a container and you study what can leach out of it into the medicine, right? Those are the kind of stuff that we've done, and we have actually protocols for it. Nobody is doing that kind of stuff on clothing. It would be fascinating and incredibly, good for eventually for people to start doing that, because that will show how bad polyester is. Polyester is the worst offender of them all. I would say, obviously spandex, you don't want something that is fully spandex, but 5 to 10% is not a problem, because it will not be absorbing anything. At that level, it's designed to more hold the fabric together. So ultimately, if one could overcome that and come up with a fully natural way to create stretchiness, that would be incredible. Then that issue completely goes out the door too. But as you said, you can't find most products. You can't find not having elastane in them or spandex in it. I'm not worried about that. That's, as I said, chemical structure is more important than just it being something out of petroleum. The polyester literally sheds. It starts shedding like the carpet. The crap that they put in our carpets. If you've ever used a vacuum cleaner on your carpet, every time you come and go, you see it get filled with all this stuff. And over time, you see your carpets get bald, right? So they're designed to shed. And that's what polyester, the fiber, is designed to shed. Elastane or spandex, the chemical physical structure is designed to hold itself together. So it doesn't shed as much. So actually it doesn't shed any. So that 5 to 10% is not a big deal.
Okay, that's good to know. I have so many questions, but you used to work in the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah.
And I remember you telling me that you had become discouraged by the practices, and did you just leave the pharmaceutical industry out of?
Yeah, right around 2018 when I got really sick, I told you my life story about that. Right around that time, I was working for a small biotech startup, and right now, look, the pharmaceutical industry is probably one of the I guess I would make all my pharmaceutical friends my enemies, but it's probably the most evil industries out there. Why would I call it that? It's because, look, our healthcare is designed to keep people sick. The healthcare industry is the sick care industry. It's really not healthcare. And a lot of it has to do with the design. Actually, one of the things I want everyone to know that doctors are generally decent people. Doctors are good people. They're not, most doctors are trained to be physicians. They don't know science. They go through medical school and they're told to memorize a certain number of things and just regurgitate it, right? That's what they do. I mean, my own doctor and I've known him for 23 years, and I've gone through a lot of these things with him. It's actually the job of us scientists to come up with these things. So if anyone's to blame, is the scientists, not the physicians. So one of the things I want everybody to know, look, you don't blame your doctors for what they don't know. They're just doing what they were taught. That's what they learned in medical school. That's what they learned from the industry. Which industry is probably the most to blame for all of this? The pharmaceutical industry and the medical device industry. Because every product that they make, the main focus on it is profit. How much money can they make out of it? If for example, you're sitting in the boardroom and there's 4 products that you can develop for the same disease, and this has actually happened to me. This is a personal story, where there's like 3 or 4 candidates for development. One actually cures the disease completely. One treats the disease very well, but makes the person, dependent on that product for life. And one treats that, let's say, a little bit worse, but at least it makes sure that the patient will come back for it. They will choose the third one every time.
To keep them as a customer, essentially.
Exactly.
For life. Yeah. I mean, we all hear these things out in, like, I listen to a lot of podcasts also, and just like a conspiracy theory. But
no, it's not. It's a business. Look, I've been in those meetings where, as a scientist, this is how it works. I want everybody to know how it works. You're sitting in a boardroom. There's a bunch of scientists sitting there. I got as high as you can get on the science track, right? Vice president of development, right there. So I'm sitting there as the science guy, trying to tell them about the products I think we should develop. Around me, who are they sitting? The executives are sitting on the other side at the head of the table. And on both sides, I'm surrounded by lawyers and businessmen, right? Finance people on one side and lawyers on the other side. The couple of scientists at the end and the executives on the other. I don't have a prayer to overcome what those lawyers and what those business
finance,
yeah, exactly, the finance guys say. They're sitting there and they're all talking about money. That's all they talk about. And whenever you get up and give a presentation, and I've done this I've done this as a consultant. I've done this as I'm working directly for big pharma. I've done this in so many different ways. And so in the old days, the pharmaceutical industries like big pharma, like say like Pfizer, let's just take big pharmaceutical companies. In the old days, they used to do research in-house. They actually had scientists that would do research, and then they would direct them to go out there and do whatever they wanted to. That model is even gone. Nowadays, the majority of pharmaceutical development is done by acquiring small biotech companies. And since small biotech companies know what the big pharma want, they purposely go towards developing products that make the most amount of money. Nobody goes out there to try to develop products that actually create, or heal or completely cure. There are very few curative medicines out there. We call those curative medicines. There are very few. Most medicines are there to treat.
Yeah. They don't want to cure it because that would be that's not profitable, is it?
No, not at all, no.
And you can't, I mean, and I understand being a business owner, you want to make money, otherwise you're not going to stay in business. But in the medical industry, I feel like there should not be a profit motive, you know, like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Look, there's certain industries that we need to look. I agree. I completely understand about profit, and everybody should be rewarded for anything that they make. I mean, I will take your product. You came up with a really ingenious. People may call it a simple design, but that's what's important: the solutions that fix things in a simple way. And you should be rewarded for what you've done, right? You make it, you get it out there, you actually are solving a problem, and you can actually build on that to help people more, right? The pharmaceutical industry wasn't designed this way. It really kind of changed back in the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s, where it was hijacked. It was hijacked by finance people, right? It was hijacked by the Wall Street people and all of that, where suddenly money became the mode of function. It wasn't meant to be like that. It was. I agree with you. Certain industries need to have that profit model taken out. Perhaps certain industries should be non-profit. I really believe that. And the pharmaceutical, medical industry, if we were to just make those non-profit, our world would change so much, and doctors would still make just as much money. And I mean, in fact, maybe more money, because a lot of this money goes towards the pharmaceutical business. It's ridiculous how expensive medicines are, and there's no reason for any of this. We have the science right now to cure many things. No one's doing it.
Wow. Yeah, that is disturbing, but it's not surprising. And I just, well, you know, human nature and incentives for self-preservation, and you want to make the most money for yourself and your family and those around you. And unfortunately, that comes at the expense of the people that you're supposedly serving. And I think as more information gets out there, being more health conscious. Do you know who Brian Johnson is? He's got a documentary on Netflix. It's called Don't Die. And then there's my light just got weird, but he also is on YouTube. He's quite fascinating. He's doing all this research into techniques, practices to live as healthy as possible and age as slowly as possible. And the number one thing he says is sleep, is getting like adequate sleep, and then diet and exercise. And he takes a lot of vitamins and eats a very strict diet. And he's kind of an insane, like, people think he's insane for the level of.
Oh, I know who he is. Yeah, I've seen the billionaire guy, the rich guy. Yeah. So yeah, I thought I knew who you were talking about. Yeah, I know a lot about him actually, and I know what he does. He's overdoing it. Sure. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Way overdoing it. I mean, there is no reason to do it to that extent, because then you're not living. You're alive, taking care of your biological functions, right? I think more than anything else, he's just trying to demonstrate to the world that it can be done. And perhaps from that perspective, he's acting like a scientist without really having that scientific training to get it out there like that. Because I know a lot of people are against him and they don't like what he does, and because he comes across as, he doesn't come across as weird. Weird, all sorts of things. So yeah, but he could probably present himself much better, I would say. But yeah, I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to just tell the people that, look, it is possible. It's possible to de-age. Look, so far all we've talked about is science. I mean, science at the level of the pharmaceutical and chemistry of today. I mean, our physics, what we learned about physics and what has been hidden from us. I mean, there's so much more to it, that some of the stuff that he does that he can't openly talk about I think has to do with his understanding of consciousness and what's the difference between consciousness and the physical world, and what we're learning about how the universe actually works. I mean, a lot of this stuff, if a person openly talks about them, they will think that guy's crazy, or he's just saying, well, what is he talking about? I mean, that sounds like the worst kind of conspiracy theory. But the reality is that we've learned a lot about the universe we live in, and we've learned about the fact that the physical world that we see around us is actually not what you see, right? We even our physics at our level kind of proves that we live in what you can call it a holographic universe. Everything is really made out of condensed light, and everything is just light. Nothing is real. I mean, everything you see with your eyes is literally just condensed light. And our physics is telling us that there are far more dimensions than the ones we see. And then the most fascinating part of it is that we're learning that what seems to be at the center of everything is consciousness. It seems like matter forms when it's observed, like a photon. I mean, now I'm going to become a physics geek, but like the purest form of energy that we know of is light, right? Light is the purest form of energy. And light is, what is light? Light is, to define light, you would say it's a wave of energy that is traveling in all 360-degree directions, right, from the source, until it's detected, until there's a detector there, whether it's a human being or a camera. It has to be an active detection. And we don't know why that happens, but when light is detected, it collapses from a wave into a particle, a photon. It turns into a particle. That's how matter is formed at the most smallest scale. Fundamental scale. So there's actually a study called the double slit experiment. If you ever get a chance to read up on it.
I've seen it.
Yeah, that pretty much proves this in the most elegant way. And so what Brian Johnson is trying to do is he's trying to mix science and understanding of consciousness, saying that your consciousness can have an impact on your physical being, because I can do whatever I can chemically, eat well, add all this stuff and all of that, but at the same time, use the power of consciousness on top of it, and you should be able to actually de-age yourself. No, which I actually don't disagree with at all. I mean, it requires, look, I've read a lot about these things, and I mean, I started my life as a scientist, a physical scientist, a chemist. I mean, as I have a PhD in chemistry, I only believed what I could see for so long. And then I went through this whole process, and then I started also going to the path of consciousness and studying all of that. And I truly believe, not only believe, I know that what we see in our universe is not, the universe is much more fascinating than what we think. So the power of consciousness is real. But that's a whole other story. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah, I'm super into that stuff. I saw What the Bleep Do We Know, and The Secret, and just like the power of thought. And I've created my business using those theories. I have vision boards, I visualize, and then you manifest. And it's either magic or it's complete bull crap.
No, look, it's not bull. Look, we have scientific evidence of it. It's not bull. It's just that we don't understand it yet, and believe it or not, there's active resistance in the scientific world to study it. There's real activism. Things are changing slowly, but up to recently, there was active resistance in regards to studying this, because we're told we live in a physical world, that everything around us is real and physical, and that everything happened by accident. There was a big bang. Now we don't know where all that big bang came from, but suddenly there was somebody that ejaculated all of this energy into the universe, right? And then it just all by itself turned into all this stuff, right? Well, if you do the math, if you do just the simple math, you will realize there hasn't been enough time in the universe. Our universe is only 14 billion years old. If you just take randomness and do mathematical studies, 14 billion years is nowhere near enough time for the amount of complexity that we have to take form. So very simple studies prove that there's far more to it than what we see. But the average, ever since the 1700s or so, our civilization has gone the path of physical scientists, physical reality, and it's going to take a lot of changes to move back. But I believe that. That's a whole separate story. But both are true. We live in a physical world where we live by these physical laws. So So you have to respect them, but you also live in a universe where consciousness is at the bottom of it all, and to a certain extent, while you're inside the construct or the universe, you can impact that. I really believe that, and monks have proven that. I mean, they're monks in they're monks that can literally not eat for days and stay alive, or reduce their body temperature or heart rate next to nothing, which would be impossible. I mean, there's so many stuff out there that defies science, our modern science.
I meditate twice a day, every day, and I do transcendental meditation, and it's really helped me stay more balanced, I guess, and not slip into these into anxiety and into maybe depression or overthinking things. And so the mind is very powerful. Obviously, it affects our physical body, and then some people say that our mind can affect the external world that we live in. And I'd like to play around with that. I don't know for sure, but it seems to be working. And it sounds like you've been kind of studying that a little bit as well.
I mean, I have my own personal feelings, but we can probably talk about that separately. But here I will talk about it from a pure scientist perspective, right? I want people to just know what our science thinks about that. Well, we have real proof that that's the case. On 9/11, right? When 9/11 happened, there are these machines we have all over the world. They're called random number generators, right? They generate random numbers of zeros and ones, zeros and ones. So they should, in the normal, under any circumstance, it should be 50% zeros, 50% ones, right? That's what randomness means, pure randomness. What do these numbers show? Whenever an event occurs that focuses collective human consciousness, that randomness changes. So it goes towards one or the other. So 9/11 is one of the biggest spikes. On 9/11, that was one of the biggest spikes in these random generator numbers. We actually saw the biggest, and this is statistically relevant. I mean, what does that mean? I have my own theories, but I'm just talking as a pure scientist here. As a pure scientist, we have scientific evidence that the mind impacts the physical world.
Yeah, I love that. Because I watch these movies and I like to believe that there's more to life than what you see, and you can affect your future by modifying your thoughts, I guess, ultimately. But I know we're running we're running short on time, and I really appreciate you being here. But has your testosterone levels, your chemicals, body, has it gotten better? I know you're taking testosterone.
Yeah. So for myself right now, I still take testosterone. I eventually want to wean myself off of it, but
I do also, by the way.
So no, I do it because of, I don't know if that cyst or the tumor is causing it or not, but it definitely, I mean, I've balanced my testosterone TRT. If you're taking it, we should talk offline, because it took me a long time to make the perfect regimen, right?
Yes.
Of how it works. And it's not just testosterone. I inject testosterone, then I use HCG to make sure for the testicular function. And then I also use aromatase inhibitors like letrozole at a certain amount of time to make sure that you don't get some of that converted to estrogen. The biggest enemy of a man's body is estrogen, and our body converts some of that. So yeah, I'm ever since I've done this for the last 2 years or so, I've kind of optimized it. The doctors would say this number is too high, but I keep my testosterone around minimum around 1200 or 1400, right around that. I like to keep it that. Even if it goes up to 2000, I mean, they get scared. I don't care, because I know that that's what, I mean, even studies now show that that's probably what a real man should have. And I can tell you this from studies, because I purposely, sometimes when I go to get my testosterone tested, I purposely don't inject and wait till like 2 weeks, 3 weeks before, when I actually haven't injected enough so that my testosterone goes down. and I think my body's making enough so that, like, for example, after if I was supposed to inject every 10 days, I inject every 10 days. But what I do is that sometimes when I want to go testing, I purposely don't inject for 20 days, right? To go and see what it's like and what the numbers are like. And then when I go test, the numbers are down to like 400 or 450, which in today's world is supposed to be completely normal. I can tell you anything below 600, I start having my brain fog. My brain fog comes back. My energy comes back. Look, I've always was like that. People always used to tell me when I was younger that I'm this energetic guy that just likes to talk and exude and all that. I lost that. I'm telling you, in those years that I'm telling you, between like 2012 and 2018, I turned into this shell of a human being. I had lost all of that, and so I've regained all of it. And I know if my testosterone goes below 500 or so, I don't let it. I just simply don't let it go below that. But yeah, I control it really well. So we can talk about that offline.
I do want to. We're gonna talk a lot more. I'm very excited to discuss some of the concepts you presented to me in our phone call. But we're gonna wrap it up. But
Sure.
Just a quick note about what you just said, because I take testosterone and I got my testosterone checked and it was at like 2000, and I immediately reduced the dose. But hearing you say that that's what historical men's testosterone levels were at, that makes me feel a little bit better.
Look, 2000 is, 2000, the more important than the actual testosterone is free testosterone. I don't know if you also get that tested, right?
I don't know.
Okay, so we should talk about that also. So there's something called, there's a total testosterone in your blood, and there's a protein that testosterone binds to where it inactivates it. It's a binding protein, and so there's also something called free testosterone, or bioavailable testosterone. Next time we'll talk offline. I want you to get those tests done. Those are more important than just testosterone concentration. Okay. And that's why I tell guys to take boron, right? 10 milligram of boron a day. Because what boron does is it increases the free testosterone, the bioavailable testosterone.
Nice. I love it. We're going to talk a lot. I'm so excited to discuss further with you a lot of these topics and how we can take SHEATH to the next level.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have a great product, and your story is amazing. And also, I think you can use your product not just as a great product, but also expand all of these men's health issues. I mean, because it goes together with your product, and it's a part of it. It's not just something that you wear that looks good. It actually helps men's health, and through spreading it, you can probably spread all of this information, which is really critical.
It is critical, and I know so many men these days with severely low testosterone levels, and they're like depressed and they don't know why, and so I'm very eager to discuss this further with you, but I'm gonna let you go, and we'll talk more. But
we talk more. You have my email and my number, so just.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I hope that was an enlightening episode for you. You might want to watch it again and take some notes. We'll be back soon. This has been another episode of the Robert Patton Global Podcast. Thank you again for joining me. Thank you, Mike, Mohsen. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.